Alright, we hear it every day. Different interest groups urging us to change our energy-consuming ways in an effort to reduce our negative impact on the environment. Renewable energy is what they advocate, that is, living a green lifestyle. Nevertheless, they choose not to share with us the negative side effects associated with going green. Thus, my proposal is the use of renewable energy is a waste of money and hurts the environment. That is to refute the claim made by my opponent that renewable energy saves money and helps the environment. I plan to disprove this claim with the following support. Renewable energy hinders the environment we live in from growing and evolving. The use of renewable energy may lead to health problems, and using renewable energy is not cost effective. Although the opposing advocate urges that renewable energy helps the environment that we live in to flourish and prosper, they focus all of their attention on 3 forms of energy, thus neglecting the other sources and their negative side effects. This leads to my first point. Renewable energy hinders the environment we live in from growing and evolving. He mentions the benefits of using wind energy in his claim, yet he fails to note the backdraws of using wind as a form of energy. According to the AWEA, American Wind and Energy Association, erosion, bird and bat killings, visual impacts, and high noise levels are all negative side effects that arise from using wind turbines. The use of renewable energy, renewable resources, does not mean that they can be replaced quickly, and certain types of resources cause harm to the earth. If a wind turbine breaks or if something happens to a solar panel, it takes a lot of money and a lot of effort to try and replace those. So the technology is not yet perfected for it to be a widespread use. Secondly, he argues that not switching to renewable energy may lead to health problems due to pollution. He again failed to mention the negative side effects that also arise from using a renewable energy, which is why I propose that going green may also lead to health problems. Taking a look at ethanol, a green alternative to gasoline. Professor Z. Jacobson of Stanford University recently conducted a study finding that ethanol fuel may be as bad or worse than gasoline. The study used a computer model to compare the air quality impact that is an 85% mix of ethanol with 15% of gasoline to that of just 100% ethanol in the year 2020. Professor Jacobson stated that ethanol is being prompted as a clean and renewable fuel that will reduce global warming and air pollution, but our results show that a high blend of ethanol possesses an equal or greater risk to public health than gasoline. Another thing is fertilizer. The fertilizer that is used to grow the corn that is used to make ethanol, or that is used just to grow the vegetation outside that allows for shade and other sustainable strategies. The fertilizer that is used to grow these things is eroded away and is eventually ends up in the ocean, causing more pollution in the water. Finally, he states that renewable energy helps the economy, and I urge that using renewable energy is not cost effective, especially during this time of a recession. You don't need an expert's opinion to know that we're in a recession, and people just don't have the money to invest in renewable energy. He urges that putting solar panels on a house, for example, saves money. It might in the long run, but in the short, the immediate cost of installing this type of equipment in your house can be very costly. Being an architecture student, we come to find cost and is important in the design of a building. According to Juntel Lin, one of my architecture teachers, she says that buildings are accountable for nearly 50% of all fossil fuels in the United States. And in designing a building, the first thing that a client takes into account is the cost and not the sustainable strategies that are used. So to conclude, although there are some benefits in using green energy, renewable energy, there are also drawbacks, and we have to think about those as well. Thank you.
All right, some very similar comments. You've got an interesting attention device. You set up a counterclaim. You actually preview what your counterclaim is going to be, or what the supporting points are going to be. Those supporting points are parallel to the claims being presented by the advocate. So although you create your own structure, you do attempt to apply it to the argument being presented by the advocate. On the environmental issue, you've got one piece of evidence that talks about wind energy in particular. And I assume that was one of the examples that the advocate used, and you talked about some of the problems with that. How significant they are is not really quantified. You've got a hypothetical example on wind technology, and you do present a claim kind of at the end of that argument instead of putting it at the beginning, because at the beginning it's just a topic area. At the end, I think you do make a claim. By the way, did you hear about that wind turbine going wacko up on the 58? Earlier this year, up in Tehachapi? It was like this last week. They shut down the freeway for a day because one of the wind turbines up there so close, it was behaving so erratically, going so fast and shimmying. They were afraid what would happen if it came loose and hit the cars. So there's an example that would apply to your illustration there. If only you'd looked at this week's paper instead of last week's website. All right. The ethanol argument, this would be a good argument if you remind us that the advocate was talking about ethanol. I'm not sure that was mentioned specifically in the advocate's claim. If that was a substantial point to the argument, then I think this is a really good point. On the cost effectiveness issue, you're talking about some general issues. I do like the way that you try and prioritize it in a value consideration. Immediate costs would be important, and I thought your explanation was pretty good there. But there's not a lot of explanation or argument about the grounds or the warrant presented by the advocate. It's mostly counterclaims. You're trying to make sure that the counterclaims apply, and I thought you did a pretty good job on some of these issues. But again, if I was looking more closely at the argument, if they weren't advocating wind power and ethanol as alternatives, then those things would be a little problematic.